And you can,
Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode one of AI Talks with GenAI Consulting. And my name is Keshav Ganeshbabu. And then we have, can we go ahead and do some introductions here? So I'm Keshav. And then,
Yeah, I'm Joe Gideon.
my name is Jaime Aguirre. I'm the head of the AI Consulting Group.
perfect. So we're here today to just talk some AI, just casually, speak about a couple topics here. And yeah, I just wanted to get started off with like some backgrounds. I'll go ahead and start. I am a senior at ASU. I've been a marketing intern with Gen AI Consulting from July. So it's been a couple months here that I've been with the company, and I really enjoy doing my Instagram posts and growing the account, and also growing the LinkedIn as well. And I'm very excited to see where this podcast goes, and I'm very happy to talk about AI and talk about the new things that are happening every week, every day almost. So yeah, I'm just very excited, and that's my background. Hand it off to Jaime.
Well, I have over 30 years experience in IT in general, technology of many different types, development, cloud computing, certainly AI. Have had multiple certifications, having studied both Gen AI as well as machine learning. So that's kind of where my background is from. Joe?
Yeah, my background, I joined GenAI Consulting this month in January. I am also a senior in college. I go to Stevens Institute of Technology in Hoboken. I study computer engineering in undergrad, and I'm doing a dual master's program for my MBA and in a master's in engineering in applied artificial intelligence that encapsulates machine learning, natural language processing, and also higher level things like generative AI, LLMs, etc. And yeah, I'm excited to continue to talk about this.
Perfect, perfect. Love that. So let's just get into some casual questions. I think first that I just want to ask both of y'all because I know that we use AI tools on a daily basis. Whether it's ChatGPT, whether it's for me, there's one tool that I've been using called Leonardo AI, which does just make images. You put in a little prompt, and it makes images for you. I mean, I'm just curious to ask what's a cool like specific AI tool or feature that you've seen. I mean, it doesn't have to be like this week, but like that you've seen. What would that be for you guys?
Well, for me, there's been a lot of tools that I think are just doing a tremendous job of showing, value and producing something that you normally would not have produced without this assistance of the tool. So when I look at tools, that's what I look for. I look for, is it making something that you would not have produced yourself? So I'll give you a base example, right? You look at the video generation that you're able to do right now. And one of the very first things I did with video generation was to come up with a small video that was just showing like some landscape and was showing some birds and some water falling, some rain. I mean, very basic stuff. And then I also did some imaging where I did some cartoon-like images of it was just some runners, like a zoo. If you pictured a zoo and them turning into actual people, into actual racers on a racetrack, I wanted it to generate something like that for me, and it did an excellent job. So I was immediately impressed with something like that because I would not have been able to come up with that by myself. So for me, that impressed me and was one of the things that attracted me into looking at all the different features. So I went from there to now I try a different tool just about every single day. One of the coolest ones I've seen was one I haven't actually used and I've been meaning to use, and that is if you guys and most people are involved or like music. So if you know music and you, for example, sometimes listen to a song and you say, well, it'd be great if I could, remix the song this way or redo it that way. Well, for a starting point, you need to be able to break up a song into the multiple components of it, the singing, the drums, the guitars, and so on. So there are tools out there that will actually create a stem for you, the music stem, which is right the underlying bass, the underlying drums in separate tracks in separate wave formats So then you could mix it yourself if you want to, or just listen to it individually as an instrumental. So that qualifies for me as one of the coolest things I've seen lately.
It's incredible how the power goes like into that. I feel like, even when it comes to composing something like that, it's incredible that AI can just take that and somehow have it in a large language model and then come out with like just music. That's incredible, right?
Yeah,
No, yeah,
completely.
there's with vision models in general, like anything going from image classification and image
Mm.
generation, even video generation now with Sora. It's crazy. There's a project that I was working on. I'm still working on it with a partner of mine, and he's going into like video ad creatives. So he creates these videos to display like on Facebook ads and that kind of stuff. And he wants an easier way to create these videos. So we're we're playing around with taking like using frame extraction and that kind of stuff from existing videos, and then using generative AI to recreate those same images in different formats and different variants
Mm.
to then string together into a new video for him, and and just automate the whole process. And there's so many things that people are doing with vision models now that's pretty insane.
That's incredible. No, no, I agree. I think as a marketer, right? As a marketer, I think there's so many tools that can that have once, there's a lot of tedious things that come with making content, like going to Canva, making videos, taking things from YouTube and doing it. And now with AI, it's like everything that a marketer can do is pretty much
Mhm.
simplified through our agents and through our operator that we will get to in the future of this podcast. But no,
Yeah.
I agree. I think you know, there's a lot more room now for creativity in that aspect.
Well, when you
So
think
we
about it,
can,
that yeah, when you think about it, that's kind of the at the heart, right, of the Gen AI movement is really to fuel creativity because you're coming up with ideas. You're actually even coming up with sometimes greater action items or direction than just an idea. You're coming up with, how should I approach this? Or how should I approach that? That's within the realm of reasoning, and that will get you, I think it'll get you very far, up to the point where you have to utilize, let's say, some creative content, and that could just take the shape of anything that you can imagine. So that's the power, I think, of the Gen AI movement is coming up with those creative ideas that you would not maybe otherwise have come up on your own.
I agree. I
For
agree.
sure. Even there's so many nowadays too with like the emergence of all these new AI models. I think Hugging Face like itself, which is it's a framework, it's a tool. I use it for benchmarking. They have I think they have like almost 1.4 million different variants of models on their website that they talk about. Like, and that's insane considering how
Mhm.
AI really only got so popular a couple of years ago. Even though machine learning has been around since the 80s, generative AI is like this brand new thing that's just rapidly evolving, just like how the internet was like when that just came out. So
Mhm.
now it's now we have to figure out like how are people going to really start like integrating these tools into their own businesses? How are people going to like make new tools? How is this stuff going to improve in the future?
Yeah.
There's issues with technology now. We're starting to hit that plateau again, where like the tech can't really keep up with how rapidly it's growing.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, now hopefully in the future, like with quantum computing or something, maybe that can stem a whole nother wave of something new.
Hmm.
Well, you have to think
No, I
about
agree.
some of the consequences of what you just said. I believe it was within the last 6 months where looking at the pace that AI is growing just in general, there was, believe it or not, a political impact of the growth of AI, and that was a proposal was actually made in government, U.S. government, to halt AI advancements and to block it for a certain amount of time in order to allow people to catch up to what was going on with AI. And so that just, it has to boggle your mind where it reaches the highest levels of government to put a stop to the advancement that's going on simply because they are not really caught up to even the technology probably from a year ago, much less what we're seeing happening on a week by week basis. So again, this is impacting more than just the technology part and the creativity. It's going into political environments also.
Even in school environments, this is a brand new major, and we're learning stuff from 7 years ago. And that's still even that's a ton of information too. It's impossible to keep up with curriculums now too.
Mm.
Um, it's crazy how like it's so difficult to keep up with this. It's difficult to keep up with it even as someone who works with it every day. There's new things coming out. DeepSeek just went crazy with the market too. Um, it's really insane. That's all you can really say about it.
Yeah. I think we just went right into one of the deep questions that I was definitely going to get into later on in the podcast. But look, that's just look. We're three passionate people about AI. Like there's just really good questions that are being asked almost every day when you're in the space, right? And I think it's just very interesting to figure out like everybody's different answers and what we all think about these kind of
Hmm.
questions. But yeah, let's go right into just another one that I want to ask you guys. What AI myths do you still hear? And then why do you think people believe them?
I got one. It's
You got one? Go ahead.
Go
yeah.
for it.
I think a lot of people, my father included, my father's
Uh,
terrified of artificial intelligence. He thinks the Terminator is going to take over, and that kind of stuff. And I feel like a lot of people do think that
yeah.
that like AI
Perfect.
will
So yeah,
somehow.
what would you say? What would you say like to your dad when he's talking to you about, okay, Terminator's gonna take us all over. We're all doomed for this. It's gonna be like just like that movie, just gonna be like Skynet. What would you say?
Well, so AI is it's not at that level at all yet. It's not even close. They all of these AI systems they operate within their own like predefined parameters almost, and they really
Mhm.
there's been no evidence, no proof yet at least of like actual real consciousness or intent with anything that they say. People are playing around with it, but it's like because there's this concept of like being like a black box model. If you ever heard of that,
Yeah.
it's kind of like where things like large language models, ChatGPT, for example, they don't really even like the people who trained it, they don't really know exactly what's going on on a really deep level with some of this AI too. So it does bring up more conversation on what's this thing actually doing, what's it actually thinking about. You'll never fully know anymore. It's too big for any humans to really fully comprehend. However, it's I don't think there's anything remotely like resembling the Terminator coming out anytime soon. I know the Nvidia stated like some stuff like around like their projections for like hardware based AI is like maybe like 2035, 2037, more than a decade from now. Um, but like the sort of track they go about since like about a decade ago has been like or even longer than that. Machine learning has been around again, like I said, since the 80s. And everything was just highly limited until now because of hardware and optimization limitations. And there's still major physical and like thermodynamic limitations that exist now, which still bottlenecks everything. Um, and like I said, quantum computing will probably end up fixing that with the qubit system that they have.
I agree. No, I think no, you just touched on pretty much everything that's um for now, right? We still have like next week to come by, and we still have like the week after that to come by, and we don't know what's going to happen in the next 2 weeks. But I definitely agree. There are regulations now, to kind of have these like rules in place that AI can't do these things. Like when you're on ChatGPT, you can't say these things or ask these things, or it won't respond. Um, I think I did do a post once on my Instagram about I think someone was asking AI some kind of questions and it came back in like a different kind of manner that was weird and it blew up instantly on the internet. I think it caught like TechCrunch and it was on like the New York Post or something like that. But obviously Sam Altman came out and he was like, "This is just a never gonna happen again, one time thing. We already got it all covered." So, I
Mhm.
mean, right? It just what do you think about that too? But I want Jaime to answer the
Yeah.
AI myth question first, and then we'll go into other things. But yeah,
Well, I don't know if it's necessarily a myth, but I know it's an emotion. So rather than maybe indicating a myth like an actual literal myth, I think the emotion of fear behind AI is probably the biggest response that I've encountered from people, both from people in the workplace as well as just regular people. When you go back and you touch upon some of the designs of the earlier models, that's exactly what they were. That's where they were rooted. They were rooted in designs. So to Joe's point, when these models are created, they're created with specific requirements, with specific parameters. So when the design goes in place, the model can't help. It's just incapable of working outside of what it's intended to do. Having said that, there is a bit of unpredictability in the models whereby you're going to encounter situations and even responses from the model that are just not going to be accurate. They're really going to be misleading, and you are going to actually be more in a position of having to evaluate what it's telling you and using your own level of intelligence, of human intelligence, to make the best of the output that it comes back to you, right? So, for example, I don't know if you've experienced this, I'm sure you have experienced it as many other people have. If you look at it from a factual perspective, you can absolutely catch it missing facts of things that you know for a fact are accurate, and it will come back and say to you, well, no, only one time has this event ever happened, where you know for a fact it happened twice or three times and whatever. So the model is only as good as the training data that it's based on, right? So again, we're talking about all the sort of peripherals that guide it. So the underlying data is one, the parameters is another, and three is that creative factor where sometimes it does have to come up with an answer because essentially you asked the question. So if it doesn't have the information, a lot of times it'll make it up. So where is it in the case, in the life cycle of, let's say, of creativity or technology as of yet? It's not to the point where you can walk away from it and allow it to answer a factual question, much less take over anyone's job doing just about anything. It can't do that yet, and we're not at that point yet. Certainly, we can say we can automate it, but if we're still using the underlying components of natural language models, you still have that in there. You still have that fudge factor that you cannot get away from, and they've yet to create a model that's 100% accurate. So human intervention, human involvement, that's still involved. That still needs to take place, and it still needs to be a part of that. So anyway, the emotion of fear, you have to kind of couple that together and compare it to how the technology got there, what it can and can't do, and where it's going. So, there are some stories that are circulated, and I've seen a couple. Maybe this qualifies as to your point about the myths, but there was a story circulated about some robots in China who were guarding a warehouse. And one of the robots, so they were all told to stay in one place, and they were all told to guard and point their camera a certain direction. Apparently, one of the robots decided he got bored, and he was going to walk over to the other robots and talk to them about following him and going into a different part of the warehouse altogether. So there's actual video. I don't know if it's AI generated or not, where they all actually walked behind this other robot who misled them into leaving their posts into another part of the warehouse. So again, I don't know how factual these stories are, but it makes you think, right? It makes you think about this. And there was one more. I'll just tell you one more story where
Joe's dad is listening to this one like that's exactly
you see,
what I
that's
was
what I
talking
mean, right?
about.
That's what I mean. Yeah,
We got
yeah.
He's gonna
robots
go in the
thinking
bunker.
together, walking together. That's exactly Is that not Terminator? I mean, like, look, that's crazy. I have not heard of that, and I think, man, if
Yeah.
I did, I probably would have posted about it on the gram. But
Well, the other
oh
story
man,
is equally intriguing. The other story is about robots that were told to converse with each other. So they converse with each other, and eventually, after getting through, I don't know how many hours of exchange, a conversation, they decided to teach and create their own language so that the humans could not understand that. I don't know how much of a myth that is. As far as I know, it was simply a story. And a lot of these stories I know are fabricated, and you have to take it with a grain of salt sometimes. But the thought of that is what fuels people to be afraid of AI, right?
Oh yeah.
That's right. You see
And
one article and it's like OpenAI, crashes out or like, it starts speaking in a crazy tone to one of the
Yeah.
users and that's it, right? You're like, I knew it. Everybody goes, I knew it. That's it, right?
and what's it called? So a big thing with that, and why like OpenAI like restricts certain things and that kind of stuff is on an ethics standpoint too, and that's why the government also wanted to halt some of these new innovations.
Yeah.
Is we've seen instances where like these AI models they reflect biases in their that's present in their own training data, and it's like it's pretty crucial to make sure that these outputs like really understand that these systems can like perpetuate existing prejudices, and
Yeah.
if they're not properly managed. Every single product of a human being has some sort of innate like bias into it that also translates that inherently translates into AI. Like humans are imperfect. Humans created AI, therefore AI is imperfect, and there's a whole philosophical ethics standpoint on that. That like that's why like places like ChatGPT have these ethical checks where you can't you can't ask it like something malicious. You can't ask it how to make a bomb. You can't ask it how to make drugs. Like it won't let you do that just like
Mhm.
for this standpoint. And there are other things too. I know in was it 10 years ago, 2014, the whole problem with Amazon with their AI recruitment software, and
Yeah.
what happened was they trained their AI on resumes that were coming from a decade before that, so like the early
Mhm.
2000s, late 90s, and when they trained those resumes on it, part of that AI was unsupervised, so it's looking for variables that the humans don't like necessarily know like yet. And so with there, it identified a woman, it identified a variable that excluded women from the hiring process because
Mhm.
the resumes back then were so predominantly male that the unsupervised part of it just started like flagging words like women's clubs or like something like that as negative
Mhm.
attributes. And
Mhm.
that bias, it's just draining bias, and where the data is given to an AI model or agent, and it was skewed. Maybe not. It wasn't intentional, but because the data was inherently skewed, the model was also biased in the same way. And the industry being predominantly male, it just the data they gave it was like reflected their own output. So sometimes, even then, you have to give it some extra parameters. You have to make sure that it's not working on certain biases like that. And this happens all the time. Just a really big one was Amazon doing that 10 years ago.
That's huge. I had no idea that was a thing, but I think that brings up a good point that as we learn how to use AI, I think we also learn how to restrict AI more in the future. We're going to understand the kind of loopholes that do occur when we're making new, advancements, such as like what you just said, right? Now we know that could happen because now we know that models can be, if we give a skewed model to an AI, now we know that we have to kind of establish more parameters so that it doesn't do what it like not include women in the process. We got to make sure that that's all in check, right? So we're
Well,
also, as AI is evolving, we're evolving how to use AI. So I think that's a good thing to discuss.
we may not be able to control parts of AI in not in the taking over the world sense. I don't want to go down that
Yeah.
route and freak people out. What you may have to do is accept the fact of its limitations, because ultimately it's designed by people. And when you talk about the machine learning models, you just pointed out a use case where it's limited, and every model is limited, mind you, just because there isn't enough scope to go and train on all of the world's data. And even if you were to do that, there's a lot of kind of know-how that's still in people's heads, that the human mind can still reason better than a artificial model, because what it's generating or creating really are derivatives of people's thoughts, derivatives of people's creative ideas. So when you tell it, for example, in my example earlier, to create me a drawing or create me a video exists, drawings exist. I just basically told it to use an existing human way of expressing itself and come up with a design for it. So it just designed something for me. It didn't create anything in particular that was mind blowing or was so genuine that no one else could have done it. No, I think it could have been done. But my point is, there's always going to be those limitations for the model in terms of the data. How many times did you train it? These are people actually making decisions behind the scenes. When you have a machine model, someone decides, believe it or not, how much data it's going to train on. Somebody decides how accurate responses you're going to be providing. Somebody makes those decisions as you train these models, and those decisions have been made in different ways for every one of the 1.5 million models that are out there on Hugging Face. Someone has made those choices and decisions. So you have to take it in that perspective that you're not always going to rely on it to give you 100% accurate responses, because even having said that, it has to train on data and you can't get the world's data and all the data in people's heads. It's always limited. So every model that you've seen out there, well, no, 95% of the models that are out there as of recently, there's an end date to the level of knowledge that they know. And they'll tell you, I'm only current as of October 2023 or September of 24. There's always a limitation to how much knowledge they have. So again, you can't assume that it's intelligence or knowledge that is limitless. There is a limit to it.
Yeah, I like that
I agree.
point. Um, what's it called? The reason why there's so many models out there is, like you said, it's impossible to train all the world's data on one model. So there's a lot of these models now are really starting to get into like really niche aspects. So like the like Claude Sonnet has its own coding model. It's and even like things like Llama, they'll have like a 7 billion, like relatively small compared to like ChatGPT's 61 billion parameter model or whatever it is. They'll have like something like Llama will have a 7 billion parameter
Mm-hmm.
model, but only on Python. So when you go and ask the questions, it'll
Yeah.
only give you answers in Python,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's even ones that get even more specific. There's ones specific for Python libraries like NumPy, Pandas, and like stuff like that, and very niche models that are probably better at doing the job of coding in Python than something like ChatGPT would be, just simply because all the data that it's on is focused on that specific point.
Right.
And there's gonna be models like that for everything. Every
Mm-hmm.
as specific as you can get, they can be a model about it.
Yeah.
Perfect. No, that's great. I think we it's good to touch on that. But I also one last little casual question here. I just wanted to ask, what is the most unexpected way that you've seen people use AI? Unexpected, kind of just like caught your eye. Like that's I didn't even know we could even with AI. That's crazy how we're doing this now. Like you could be like, oh, this is I can't believe that how fast we're doing this now, or like stuff like that. I can go ahead and start, but this is actually a very niche kind of topic. But I'm a chronically online kind of person. Like I do need to get off TikTok sometimes or Instagram sometimes, and I kind of fall victim to that. But I
Mm-hmm.
did see earlier today. I think it was actually yesterday, and I don't know if anybody follows like like football and all this, but I saw a Saquon Barkley interview where he's cussing the whole time, cussing out his teammates, cussing out the other team, and it's AI, and the AI is moving his mouth to the words
Mm-hmm.
in his interview. So someone took the Saquon Barkley interview, put it into an AI. The AI then he made him say different words, and then the AI moved his mouth and made the same like vocal structure as Saquon, and they put it into a TikTok, and then it was literally like an edit of him like getting touchdowns and doing what he does and jumping backwards over people. It was crazy. I was like, this is AI now.
Yeah,
Like unexpected for me at least. I was actually like taken aback because I had to go in the comments and then I was like, everyone was like, "Wow, AI is getting really real," and I'm like, AI is genuinely like I did not. That's the first time that I looked at something and I was like, I could not believe that was AI. I thought it was real.
yeah.
But
I've seen videos with Pat Mahomes and the whole thing with like him and the refs like colluding together, and it'll be like Pat Mahomes like talking about the game against the Bills last week. Like, oh yeah, the refs like they told me Josh Allen was too good and like that I actually have to play, and they're not gonna give me all the flags that I want.
they're not gonna give me all the flags that I talked about. Like in his voice too. It's crazy, and it's
Yeah,
all fake. It's all AI, which is actually like mind-boggling. But and that's just that probably happened this week too. So you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So I
How many you
think
got one for us?
Well, there's a lot of AI use in science, education, and all of the uses I think are pretty relevant. Some of the cases I've seen are not necessarily strange, but for example, when you mentioned this topic of making maybe it's similar to a deep fake, right? It's very similar to a deep fake. That's kind of what you're doing. You're simulating speaking like somebody else in their own voice. I think where the technology of AI probably is more exposed is in the video and music industries for whatever reason that gets the biggest exposure rather than some of the other technical aspects of it. So in video and music, I'll give you an example on video or even imaging. You've seen multiple advertisements, I'm sure, where they're doing headshots. All you have to do is provide a few sample photos of
I did
yourself,
see this. I did see this.
and
Yeah.
it is training its model. So this is all machine learning behind the scenes, FYI, right? It's going to
Yeah.
train on your face. It's going to look at different angles of your face. It will train a model to simulate you wearing a business suit or out in the Bahamas, out on the beach somewhere, or in middle of Siberia, fighting a bear, right? All sorts of
I've had
things.
so many friends do this. Yeah.
It can do so many things, and it can put you in these situations because now it's learned the pattern of your face from multiple angles and from in different lighting, right? So the way that it can do that is just mind blowing. That's probably one of the simpler use cases I've seen. The other one being, I don't know if you've heard about this, but again, back to the sort of the film industry and relating to imaging and video. Another is where they are now employing what's called de-aging technology with actors. So if someone like a Morgan Freeman is in a movie and he wants to appear like he's 25 years old, they can do that now, where he can act out a scene. They will go back, use AI technology to remove 50 years of his life and have him act out in a scene as if he's 25 years old all over again. So that's stuff that we would never have dreamt about in the past. In the past, somebody would have put on a mask, or they would have shot it in black and white, or they would have, put all kinds of synthetics on his face to make that happen. But that's no longer the case. And mind you, it's not just the visual. So whereas they can de-age him and push him back 50 years, they can also do that to his voice. So it's a whole effect that you're getting that you would not have normally seen otherwise.
yeah,
Crazy, crazy stuff.
I think Disney did something similar with Luke Skywalker. I'm not sure if they used AI or not. They used another actor like in the
Mm.
Mandalorian show.
And then,
I think
dude,
they
yeah, I
used another
think.
actor, and then I think they used some sort of. It might have just been CGI. I'm not sure, but
Yeah.
they made that actor who somewhat looks resembled Mark Hamill when he was
Yeah.
at it, and then slapped his face on that, and then it was
Mm.
pretty good. It was really good,
I watched
and
that scene live the day it came out that Sunday. I think it was. I don't know if it was every Sunday what it was. I think I was definitely I was in high school and it was like a new episode every Sunday and I saw that scene. But they killed it because like we all knew it was AI. We all knew it was fake. But just the fact that it was there, the fact that he was there and it
yeah,
looked kind of resembled him, and they played the music. They had the green lightsaber and everything. AI, man. Yeah,
it's
I agree. That's
fascinating.
cool.
I know
Yeah.
something that like caught my eye. It was a let's see, someone trained an AI on data from like South Park, from that is the popular cartoon South Park, and now this AI has the capability to completely generate full episodes of South Park,
Mm.
completely generate them, and it mirrors the humor, the art, the voices, even the cameos that they
Yeah.
do, everything. I think it's called Showrunner AI. I don't, and I'm not even sure if it's publicly released yet. This happened last year, but this still fascinates me to this day. And I think they even created their own like brand new cartoons based on this data that they got.
Yeah.
Um, it's crazy stuff, and like there's a YouTube video online showing like there's a whole environment of the entire like community of South Park, and like they'll show like the NPCs of like each character, and they'll just be walking around, and you can stage episodes. You can guide the AI to like stage a specific episode if you wanted to, and it'll
Mm.
do all of it for you. It's
Yeah.
great.
I
To
give
the
an
same
example.
level of like an old South Park episode, or do you think that you can still kind of tell that it's AI?
Um, from me, I think I can you can tell
Mm.
for
Exactly.
somebody who maybe isn't as familiar with like how AI tends to generate things because you can tell like in AI generated photos and stuff like people
Yeah.
really bad at generating fingers, ears, like small things about humans, and
Hmm.
um, that also translates to cartoons, obviously. So when it
Yep.
does this, like you could somewhat tell, and I think there's probably like watermarks on it because they don't want to steal like South Park's
Yep.
like creativity stuff.
Hmm.
But you'd be able to tell just like with like most AI video, AI photos if, of people especially, it's very difficult
Yeah.
to recreate
Hmm.
like a perfect human being like that, or
Right.
just normal human being, whatever.
Right.
That takes you to the early days of CGI, though. If you remember the early CGI movies, I mean, they were tremendous and great, and you were seeing things that you had never seen before. But you could tell that it was computer generated imaging and video. However, if you look at some of the latest work that they're doing on videos and in movies, it is just sometimes you can't tell. You're just completely fooled by what's happening.
Even the Avatar movie that came out long time ago, it was
Hmm.
fantastic,
It was.
absolutely fantastic. That was a I don't even know what the word is for it. It was for its time that was fantastic. Like
It was.
I
Though
think it's
they
still no.
did
I
use.
think it's still number one grossing, isn't it? Or I think it might be number two or
it,
something.
it
I don't know
might
if
be number
Avengers
one too.
Endgame took it over,
Right.
but
I
man,
will give the
Avatar was like,
credit. I won't give the full credit to AI for that one, although it was impressive visually. They used a lot of human models, believe it or not, to simulate a lot of
yeah.
the action. So again, it goes back to people still being involved in parts of this.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah,
Definitely. That was definitely not 100% or not even like I won't even say like 10% maybe like AI. That was all like, they took it took decades to film that. Is that right? I'm not sure if I'm right, but
I
I know it
remember
took a
7
decent amount
years.
of time to film.
Yeah, I remember something like 7 years it took to put that
Seven
movie together.
years.
Hmm.
Yeah. Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, perfect. I think no, that's great. Um so now let's just get right into the topic of the week. Maybe the topic of this, I mean, I want to say topic of the year, but
It's
there's
only
just so many things
January.
going on. Like when I literally wrote this question, like a couple of days ago, there has been already a new advancement that I'll talk about in a couple minutes. But um, let's go ahead. So with the birth of DeepSeek, what do we feel about the future of this race in AI, the USA versus China, and the comparisons that are being made to the race to the moon?
It's not under.
And
It's not the same. It's. I don't see it as a race to the moon type of similarity or scenario. Simply because when you get to the moon, you get to the moon. You're done. There is no endpoint for AI. Whoever puts a
that's a good
stake
point.
and saying we're done with I think they're going to find that they're probably not going to be correct. Just as we haven't been able to stop a lot of the other technical parts of our world, we just haven't stopped the innovation. We haven't stopped the advancements in any technology, right? They're progressing to this day. So I'm not so sure that there's going to be a very similar race to get anywhere. What will be the endpoint to gather all the data in the planet and update it every day and get all of the information and people's experiences and knowledge and most importantly, here's one that maybe isn't mentioned very often: common sense. Right? You're not always going to be able to build in common sense into a model because it's just very difficult to define. Although it's called common and it's called common sense, very few people are able to code it. Very few people are able to put guidelines around it. This mention about discriminating with resumes is a perfect example where common sense was not really guiding that recruitment effort because, again, being guided by data, which can be skewed, can be, very much limited, you're always going to have that limitation. So I don't really see it as a race to get anywhere. I think it could be a race, as meaning two or three different people on a track. But remember, a track is circular. So once you reach a first lap, you keep going. Once you reach a second lap, you keep going. There really is no end to that race. Yeah, so I see it more similar to that.
I think I think you made some good points. I kind of like I can see both ways of it. Like the space race is in, it's just like it's kind of like two like countries really competing like on a very
Yeah,
high, like very
competition.
very.
Yeah,
So, but like hopefully like this rivalry like it's um I don't really know. I don't it's a lot of hope. Like there's hope that like this doesn't like really overshadow the need for global cooperation on this. Just imagine what would happen if the United States and China collaborated on something like this, and
Mhm.
actually like imagine how further in the future we would be, kind of thing.
Good point. Good point.
True statement.
I think no, no, I actually love the point that both of y'all make, especially like, I want to touch on the point that Jaime made about how we're not stopping once we reach that kind of AI goal, or whoever's gonna beat anyone doesn't really matter, because the race is not gonna end. And that's a great point. Because when you're right, when we get to the moon, we get to the moon. What's the next, Mars? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I see that comparison. And um yeah, I think we all know that AI is gonna be the next big thing, and we've known that, reaching certain achievements is kind of like the goal of a lot of countries now.
Hmm.
And I think just recently, I don't know if you guys have heard this, but Alibaba AI is just announced an AI that beats both DeepSeek and OpenAI.
Yes, I heard
I
about
think I
this.
think I think, I think yeah, I think it's called Quen 2.5 or something like that.
Right.
And
Hmm.
I mean Alibaba. I mean, who was making these claims? Alibaba's making, like, Alibaba. They're saying that their model is best. No one else has checked it.
Hmm.
I mean, it could be, it could not be, but as of 2 days ago, this just happened. So now it's China versus China. So, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's changing
Hmm.
so much. There's
Right.
just new stuff
Right.
coming out, and
Yeah, when they claim that stuff, you gotta wait for it to be released. You gotta wait for things like Tencent, Hugging Face to actually go and the benchmark it, and then you can
yep,
see all the graphs. You can see which way that this model excels more than this one, and you can directly compare everything. Um,
yep.
Especially like I'm still shocked on how DeepSeek got created though. Like that was a really revel of engineering that they did. They didn't have the right like all the GPUs access to the GPUs that Nvidia had. They had a much smaller budget than OpenAI had, and they made something that was really really valuable. And I think it goes to show that maybe there is a lot of room for optimizations that people in America just aren't doing because there's not a big enough constraint with money that there was in with DeepSeek. And yeah, DeepSeek is slightly different from an LLM in terms of it's more of a like an MOE model, a mixture of experts model, where it's a neural network architecture as well. However, the LLM itself it's divided into some like little experts instead of it being one big network. It's divided into sub networks called experts where they use like kind of like a gated network to decide which expert is best suited to
Mm.
process a specific input. So this helps for more efficient computation, more specific like semantic responses based on the user's input, that kind of stuff. And like yeah, normal LLM does it's a single unified network, whereas the mixture of experts model, like what DeepSeek is, it kind of divides the entire. I think version 2 was like this too of DeepSeek, but version 3 like confirmed this that you dividing the workload into multiple experts inside the same neural network and focusing on specific tasks helps for better performance, parallel processing, which has always improved significantly, even with processors. Like back in the day, Intel they came out with their multi-threading and that kind of stuff. It's the same concept with an LLM that can really improve the performance of these models. And I've seen it with one other model before DeepSeek, and it wasn't really a model. It was a combination of models called the Martian router, and this combination of models, the Martian router, what it does is decides which model is best to use. So it uses maybe like you can use as many LLMs as you want. You can throw them in. You can throw in OpenAI. You can throw in Claude. You can throw in Olama, and from there, Martian router will take in the question. It'll say, "Oh, this question is best suited for this model," and he'll give the question to that model.
Mm.
And that's what DeepSeek's kind of doing. But instead of combining multiple language models, it's all in one language model, and that's what makes it extremely optimized. And using something like multi-head latent attention, which is sort of like a module for like attention mechanisms uh, that runs through itself recursively and like several times at the same time in parallel. So that's the main reason why DeepSeek kind of like destroyed the market almost. It didn't destroy the market. It affected the market for sure.
Do you think that do you think that OpenAI is going to have to kind of, adapt to this new expert model and change their LLM to, maybe even like make it better or kind of, adapt to the competition?
I think yeah, they're not gonna. I don't know if they're gonna change their existing stuff. They might change what they do in the future,
Yeah.
especially now that a lot of investors they pulled out because now they're like, why are we spending so much money on OpenAI when someone else did it for a fraction of the cost? And like I got almost like a very comparable output. So now they're probably eventually gonna have to work with more constraints on time and money, and it's gonna help. It's gonna force them to think more innovatively. It's gonna force them to think more like engineers.
Yep.
Which engineering in general, it's all it is you have a specific budget and you need to solve a problem and you have to fix it like no matter what. That's what they're gonna have to
Yep.
start leaning towards instead of having an almost infinite um, budget with that.
Yep. That's great.
Well, the disruption, if you think about what the disruption that was caused a few days ago with this DeepSeek and the deep impact it had on the stock markets, because it was a financial disruption. And the coordinator of experts or the management of experts, I think that that's an architectural implementation that certainly is probably going to be copied by a lot of other companies down the road. But when you look at how the stock market, for example, or the average person took to a company like Nvidia and other LLM makers like OpenAI taking a hit in the stock market, was not necessarily because of a new model was being used to come up with DeepSeek. It was more related to the tremendous difference in the investment that was made by those upfront companies versus someone else essentially piggybacking onto their efforts to come up with a equivalent model that was done in a more cost-effective way through a process called distillation. So this process of distillation is essentially a way to pick up information that's already been built, already been coded by other large language models, and therefore they were able to make use of this, although it's prohibited, this distillation method, which is essentially learning how another model responds. The time and investment it takes to do that, you already have a model in place. You don't have to go out and retrain on all the data that the initial model did. You're now focused not so much on the training, but you're focused on the responses. So if you ask me, it's going to be that process, which, by the way, is not legal. If you go through that process, that may be a process that other companies start to mimic as a way to save money, because spending $200 million to come up with the initial model versus six, to any company, they're going to say, why did I invest that extra money in the first place? It was valid that they did that. However, now that they had this way of re-architecting or evolving a model, it's something everyone's going to have to look at, how ethical it is to do it and how they can prevent others from essentially copying their intellectual work, right? So these are bigger questions that have been raised because of the DeepSeek disruption we're going to have to see how that pans out.
Perfect,
Sure.
perfect. So that actually perfectly segues into my next question about kind of ethical considerations and responsible development. So I think with AI advancing so quickly, how do we think that we can keep these ethical considerations and responsible developments at the forefront, and how we can really focus on the ethics of what's going on and how we can protect intellectual property and all that kind of that kind of stuff moving forward. What do we think we can do?
I mean, I
Um,
tend to think. Go ahead, Joe.
I was gonna say just like briefly, I
Yeah,
didn't completely finish my thought.
yeah.
I think transparency is ideal with this stuff. Ideally, if there was some sort of way to make a model open source like DeepSeek did, like using open source models, using stuff like just for the benefit of people instead of for profit, that can really help develop and maintain an ethical like standpoint. I think also can tie into the biases that we were talking about before too, to make sure like you're gonna have to make sure that this stays regulated. The government honestly is not going to be able to keep up with this. The people in Congress, in the Senate and stuff, like I don't even think they understand anything about AI. To be honest, like it's just because of the times, the way that this is so rapidly evolving. It's up to the people. It's up to the people. It's up to the developers to really just try to keep things as transparent as possible.
I agree. Jaime, do you want to add on to that?
Well, I think we go back to the human element, guys. It's very, very hard to say any one technology can be allowed to run on its own without human involvement. It's just extremely hard. Even when give the other examples that we talked about earlier of some facts, and I mean, very few people argue with facts, but facts are what they are. If an LM model can get facts wrong, how is it not going to have a possibility or risk of not selecting the right candidates because of their gender or because it wasn't trained on the right data? Again, people made those decisions, and therefore it's going to be very difficult not to include a human element where a person sees at this and says, well, wait a minute, why am I only receiving male resumes? I mean, it's not the way the company wants to do it. Therefore, the model should be reflective of company policies and such. But the other point is, when you think about the monetization of these models, well, it's hard to foresee a point where, and I would love to see that. Don't get me wrong. I would love to see them makes every model open source. But then again, we are getting used to always having a basic model and a pro tier, and you can do this much for an extra $100 a month. I mean, we're all used to that now, right? We even have subscription models for features in our cars that a lot of car makers wanted to introduce. So people are kind of getting used to the fact that if something is useful to you, if you want heat in your car in the winter, some car makers want to charge you for that. And so the monetization of different things and aspects is something that the market, I think, is introducing in various aspects. And sometimes people reject it. People don't like to be monetized. And I think that there's always the law of supply and demand, and nothing could be clearer when it comes to AI tools, because the market will determine how much people are willing to pay for this. I mean, some of us are already subscribed to these models for the pro tier and the this tier and that tier, and there's other people who they just want to use it for casual use or entertainment or write me a poem type of use, nothing too serious. So we have both sides of the coin. Of people even want to use it at work for the work that they're supposed to doing, so to supplement or to replace the work that they do. But again, it's a set of eyes, it's a set of hands that is entering the prompts, a set of hands that may be adjusting the output and outcome of these chat models and their output. So I don't know, and I can't foresee when we're going to be able to remove the human element. So to guard off that bias, to guard off some of those maybe discriminatory aspects of what we see in data, what we see in human thinking, for the foreseeable future, I think you have to have a human involved, because at least until now, they're still fighting on creating what they're calling general human intelligence in models. That's something they're actively working to perform and to do. But we're not there yet. We're not at the point of creating anything that knows all the risks, knows all the discriminations, knows every single way of leaving someone out or not including them. I think we're a while away from doing that.
I don't even think a single human knows all of that either. Like
Exactly.
that's the
Good
problem.
point.
But
Right.
I do love what you just said. I think you made some great points. Opened my eyes a little bit too. Everything nowadays is becoming a service instead of a product as well. Everything's service. I think about 70% of all American businesses are providing services now instead of just simply products.
Right.
So, and especially in software. Software is huge with the servicing.
Right.
Everything from Netflix to Hulu, entertainment
Hmm.
to AI models to yeah, to like you said, your cars. Everything's now a subscription service. We're paying. I think my dad's paying a $60 a month subscription on top of his car payment for to use his car.
Really? My God.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, I think no, yeah, this conversation really like make me open my eyes to a couple things as well because I think like Jaime said, the human involvement needs to be pushed in the future, and like you said, Joe, we need the we need that transparency with the government. We need that transparency from all AI models to make sure that the ethics are being considered, and I think that these are just great points to be brought up, and yeah, unfortunately, I think that's all the time that we do have today. But from me personally, I learned a lot from this talk about not only AI, but like what goes into, processing and LLMs and how DeepSeek it became so good because of the like specific things that they're doing better and just different outlook on AI. So I do really appreciate the talk today, guys. And yeah, do you want to end with some final thoughts?
I learned a lot too. Both you guys, you taught me some things that I didn't know myself. Like I didn't hear about Alibaba yet. So I have to read up on that now. I think the best way to learn is to communicate, to make sure that everyone's on the same page, and I think this is a really good route to do it.
Well, for me, closing, I think there's a lot of knowledge that could be learned through the conversations, and certainly this is by no means all the knowledge. There are still a lot of topics that are coming up every day, and many topics we haven't discussed and talked about. But hopefully, this brings people a little bit closer to the issues at hand, and they understand a little bit better before they heard the podcast. So, hopefully, it served its purpose.
Perfect. I agree. Perfect. Well, I guess that ends AI Talks episode one. Thank you everyone for watching. Thank you everyone for the engagement, and we'll see you next week.
Bye, everyone.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye bye.